إذاعة الجزائر الدولية لن تفوتكم لحظة واحدة من الأخبار السياسية والاقتصادية الهامة. إذاعة الجزائر الدولية، صوتنا في العالم.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. In today's top stories, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has ended his official visit to Italy, during which constituted, as he put it, an opportunity to add new building blocks to the yet exemplary bilateral relations, calling Italy a key and serious partner. The President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Giorgia Meloni, has hailed the Algerian-Italian relations, saying that her country aspires to become an energy distribution hub in Europe through the strategic partnership with Algeria. In New York, Algeria has denounced the cruel and deliberate plan of the Israeli occupation to annihilate the Palestinian people. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Salmani. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has achieved his official visit to Italy. Earlier in the day, President Tebboune met with Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican State. The President of the Republic was welcomed upon his arrival at the Vatican City-State by the Regent of the Papal Household. The Algerian community settled in Rome has warmly welcomed the President in the streets of Rome. President Tebboune has co-chaired in Rome with the President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Ms. Giorgia Meloni, the signing ceremony for several partnership agreements and memoranda of understanding covering various areas of cooperation between the two countries during his official visit to this friendly country. The details with Said Bougazi.
The agreements were signed at the end of the fifth session of the Algerian-Italian High-Level Intergovernmental Summit, co-chaired by the President of the Republic and Ms. Giorgia Meloni in the presence of members of the two countries' delegations. These include a memorandum of understanding in the fields of agriculture, fisheries and food processing, a memorandum of understanding in the fields of aquaculture and fish farming, a memorandum between the Sonatrach Group and the Italian company Eni, a film co-production agreement, and an agreement on mutual recognition of driving licenses. The two parties also signed a memorandum of understanding in the fields of postal services and telecommunications, a memorandum of understanding on the protection, support and promotion of the rights of persons with special needs, a memorandum of understanding in the field of rescue and firefighting, a memorandum of understanding on an operational plan for search and rescue at sea, and a memorandum between the Italian Agency for Investment Attraction and Business Development, Invitalia, and the Algerian Agency for Investment Promotion, API. The two parties also signed a cooperation agreement on counter-terrorism and a joint declaration in the field of defense.
President Abdelmajid Tebboune has expressed joy and satisfaction about his visit to Italy, saying that it constitutes an opportunity to add new building blocks to the yet exemplary Algerian-Italian relations. Speaking at the fifth session of the high-level Algerian-Italian Intergovernmental Summit held in Rome, President Tebboune stressed that the event is a prominent station in the continuous work and coordination aimed at strengthening and expanding the partnership between the two friendly countries.
أجدد التعبير عن مشاعر السعادة والارتياح لوجودي مرة أخرى في العاصمة روما بمناسبة الدورة الخامسة للقمة الحكومية الجزائرية الإيطالية. إنها مناسبة تتقاسم فيها لحظة هامة نضيف فيها معا لبنات جديدة لصرح العلاقات النموذجية الجزائرية الإيطالية، ومحطة بارزة في سياق العمل والتنسيق المتواصل لتعزيز وتوسيع الشراكة بين بلدين الصديقين.
The head of the Algeria state emphasized that the fifth session of the Algerian-Italian Intergovernmental Summit allowed to take practical steps that express a firm will to strengthen historical bilateral relations and to build more bridges of cooperation. He added that those bridges are not limited to one sector, but include several others such as water resources, sustainable agriculture, industry, transportation, cultural and scientific cooperation, in addition to energy and renewable energy, translated by the signing of several agreements of a security, economic and cultural nature.
في هذا الدورة الخامسة للقمة الحكومية الجزائرية الإيطالية جسدنا خطوات عملية معبرة عن إرادة سياسية راسخة لتقوية علاقاتنا الثنائية التاريخية ولمد المزيد من جسور التعاون ليشمل قطاعات واعدة منها الموارد المائية والزراعة المستدامة والصناعة والنقل والتعاون الثقافي والعلمي، بالإضافة إلى التأكيد الشراكة الموثوقة مع إيطاليا الصديقة وأوروبا في مجال الطاقة والطاقات المتجددة، وهو الأمر الذي تكرس اليوم فيه التوقيع عن العديد من الاتفاقيات ذات الطابع الأمني والاقتصادي والثقافي.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has highlighted the performance of the Algerian economy in Rome, calling Italy a key and serious partner in supporting Algeria's ambitious economic development in the service of their mutual interests. Co-chairing the closing of the Algerian-Italian Business Forum with the President of the Italian Council of Ministers, Ms. Giorgia Meloni, the President of the Republic affirmed that the holding of this forum reflects the depth of bilateral historical relations and reflects the two sides' commitment to further strengthening them and raising them to the expected level. In this context, he recalled that the Algerian economy in various sectors is experiencing great momentum, as evidenced by the positive results achieved in recent years, with indicators among the best in the Mediterranean region. In this regard, President Tebboune evoked economic growth, economic diversification and control of major balances, which he said demonstrate the effectiveness of the measures taken to achieve the model in force in countries classified as emerging in Europe. Meanwhile, he expressed conviction about the results achieved during the visit, both through the agreements signed or the results of the Algerian-Italian Businessmen Forum, which opened broad horizons for a model Algerian-Italian strategic partnership that truly reflects and strengthens the ancient relations and deep-rooted ties of friendship between Algeria and Italy.
أعرب عن يقيني بأن ما أنجزناه في هذه القمة، سواء تعلق الأمر بالاتفاقيات القطاعية الموقعة أو بنتائج ملتقى رجال أعمال الجزائري الإيطالي، ما أنجزناه اليوم يفتح آفاق واسعة للشراكة جزائرية إيطاليا، استراتيجية نموذجية تعكس حقا عمق العلاقات العريقة وروابط الصداقة المتجدرة بين الجزائر وإيطاليا.
After highlighting the political and institutional stability enjoyed by Algeria, the President of the Republic highlighted the development of its infrastructure, stressing that Algeria, which has the largest road network in Africa, aims to create the largest rail transport network on the continent. He reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to reviving industry on a sustainable basis that will enable meeting the needs of the domestic market and then turning to exports. The head of the Algerian state expressed the wish to benefit from the internationally recognized Italian experience that has made Italy the second largest economic power in Europe, particularly with regard to the industrial zone ecosystem. The President of the Republic praised the bilateral projects completed in the hydrocarbon sector, including the latest contract signed between the Italian company Eni and the Sonatrach Group, worth more than $1 billion. In conclusion, President Tebboune highlighted the convergent views between Algeria and Italy on a number of regional international issues. The head of the Algerian state reiterated on the occasion the political and moral responsibility of the international community to stop the ongoing genocide and violations perpetrated against the Palestinian people.
أن يتحمل المجتمع الدولي مسؤوليته السياسية والأخلاقية لوقف الإبادة والانتهاكات متواصلة ضد الفلسطينيين، وعبرنا في ذات السياق عن قلقنا إزاء الوضع العام في الشرق الأوسط وما يستدعيه من مساع ملحة وعاجلة لتفادي التصعيد وعدم الاستقرار للمنطقة.
For her part, the president of the Italian Council of Ministers, Giorgia Meloni, said that the relations between Algeria and Italy continue to strengthen. More with Mohammed Khatil.
The Italian official emphasized that the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, enjoys great competence, stressing that the relations between Algeria and Italy continue to strengthen, particularly in the fields of defense and counter-terrorism. She also recalled that the situation in Gaza cannot remain tragic.
When dealing with a partner who has extensive experience and deep insight, President Tebboune, who is highly competent, and I spoke at length about foreign policy. His views are always valuable and based on extensive knowledge. We discussed stability and security in the Mediterranean region. There is an agreement to renew cooperation in the field of defense and another to coordinate our efforts in the fight against terrorism. We have excellent coordination in the fight against illegal immigration. We also have extensive cooperation in the Sahel region, and we also discussed the situation in Libya. We also discussed the ongoing conflicts. The situation in Gaza cannot remain so tragic, and attacks against civilians cannot be justified.
Regarding bilateral cooperation in the energy sector, the President of the Italian Council of Ministers affirmed that her country aspires to become an energy distribution hub in Europe through the strategic partnership it is developing with Algeria.
Today, we are witnessing the signing of numerous agreements between two countries and two productive systems, and we are naturally very proud of this result, which is not just a number, but also reflects many common goals that Italy and Algeria continue to define together. These agreements allow us to say that the friendship between our two countries, which is undoubtedly a deep, long-standing, continuous, and solid friendship, has never been that specific, and that our bilateral relations have reached a level of strength and depth that has never been achieved before. It is clear that Algeria is, for Italy, a strategic partner in every sense of the word. And this is based not only on the historical relationship between two countries that share a Mediterranean coastline, but also on the model of cooperation that we have built over time.
Ms. Meloni affirmed that Algeria was a dynamic, friendly country, describing the prospects for bilateral cooperation as promising. She added that Italian companies aspire to invest not only in the energy sector, since Algeria invests massively in other vital sectors.
Il successo e I risultati di questo business forum.
Good results today for the Algerian-Italian Business Forum. Today, Italy is a key partner for Algeria. We have made significant progress in our economic relations, and I would like to thank President Tebboune for his considerable effort in achieving these results. Our companies are not limited to the energy sector, because Algeria is a truly dynamic country that invests heavily in vital sectors.
The President of the Italian Council of Ministers concluded by stating that the model of cooperation established between Algeria and Italy is capable of achieving growth, building on the legacy left by Enrico Mattei through the implementation of several projects that reinforce the positive momentum of the fruitful relations existing between the two countries.
Now, the Minister of State in charge of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohammed Arqab, has met in Rome with the Italian Minister of the Environment and Energy Security, Gilberto Fratin, with whom he discussed ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the energy sector. The discussions focused on renewable energies, the production and transport of green hydrogen, and the transmission of electricity to Europe via an underwater cable passing through Italy. Now, the Deputy Minister to the Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Saad Shingriha, has received the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Rwanda on a visit to Algeria at the head of a high-level military delegation. On the occasion, the Army General stated that the Algerian-Rwandan military agreement reflects both countries' commitment to stronger ties, with recent exchanges paving the way for deeper cooperation on security and regional challenges.
يأتي لقاؤنا اليوم الذي يشهد توقيع على بروتوكول الاتفاق الحكومي.
Our meeting today, which marks the signing of the Algerian-Rwandan joint government protocol agreement for cooperation in the military field, reaffirms the determination of the leaders of both countries to elevate our bilateral relations to a model level. In recent years, our relations have witnessed a new dynamic characterized by the exchange of visits between officials of the two countries. These visits have opened promising prospects for strengthening bilateral cooperation in various fields, including the military and security sectors, and have paved the way for practical convergence between our two countries, particularly in areas such as sharing expertise and best practices and coordinating efforts to face the various challenges confronting our continent.
That was the Deputy Minister to the Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Said Shingriha. Now in other news, Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama, has denounced in New York the cruel and deliberate plan of the Zionist entity to annihilate the Palestinian people. Masoud Sharfi in this report will tell us more.
Noting the immense suffering of Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, Mr. Benjama said this is not war but a planned annihilation of a people. Despite the suffering Palestinians remain, he affirmed the occupation is not eternal, justice will prevail.
What we are witnessing is not war, it is annihilation, not only of people but of life itself. This is a plan, a cruel, a deliberate plan to erase a people, to wipe away their roots from their homeland. But no matter how many bombs fall, no matter how deep the pain of the Palestinian people in Gaza, Palestinians are not leaving. The Israeli occupation may seem powerful, but is it eternal? Justice, however, long delayed, always finds its way. And the day will come when this horrible occupation ends.
In this context, the Algerian diplomat called for the international community to recognize the Palestinian state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. He said humanity and justice are bleeding in Gaza, where famine is used as a weapon and spares no one. Yet the world watches and the Security Council remains silent.
Humanity is bleeding in Gaza in the last 600 days. But so too is the very idea of law, of morality, of justice, of conscience. International law is being trampled. Famine is being openly used as a weapon. In Gaza, famine is spreading like fire through dry land. It touches everyone. It affects everyone. Doctors, nurses, journalists, humanitarian workers, UN staff. It affects everyone. Children, mothers, the elderly. Yes, Gaza is starving. And the world, the international community, is only contemplating. And the Security Council is watching with no action.
Quoting an official from the NGO Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, Ammar Benjama said that this famine is deliberate and that it could end tomorrow if the occupying authorities allowed sufficient humanitarian aid to enter. Instead, aid convoys are being blocked and humanitarian centers attacked. Mr. Benjama said the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has become a death trap with over 1,000 killed and thousands injured simply for seeking food.
The so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, I should say Gaza Hunger Foundation, has tragically become a death trap, a trap endangering the very lives of the starving Palestinians that it claims feeding. Aid is no more a race for life. It has become a race to death. More than 1,000 people killed, over 6,500 injured, just for seeking help, just for seeking food, just for reaching out of bread. This is the blatant reality.
Mr. Benjama condemned the mass killing in Gaza, settler violence in the West Bank, and urged a ceasefire, access for food aid and observers, and respect for humanitarian law.
In a briefing to the Security Council on the situation in the Middle East, UN Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Khaled Khiari, warned of the rapidly deteriorating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, citing intensified Israeli military operations, rising casualties and worsening food insecurity and displacement.
While talks are ongoing, the horrific situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate, with Israeli military operations and hostilities expanding throughout the Strip and the human toll mounting by the hour. This nightmare of historic proportions must end immediately. At least 1,891 Palestinians were killed in Gaza since my last briefing on 30 June, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. Some 294 were reportedly killed while attempting to collect aid, including in the vicinity of militarized aid distribution sites. Israeli forces continue to issue evacuation orders, causing the repeated displacement of the population. Food insecurity and the broader humanitarian situation continue to worsen despite the limited increase in the approval of entry of humanitarian supplies.
That was the UN Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Khaled Khiari. Now, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has said that a large proportion of the population in Gaza is dying of hunger because of the blockade and the Zionist aggression.
The 2.1 million people trapped in the war zone that is Gaza are facing yet another killer on top of bombs and bullets: starvation. We're now witnessing a deadly surge in malnutrition-related deaths. Since July 17th, severe acute malnutrition centers are full without sufficient supplies for emergency feeding. In 2025, WHO has documented 21 deaths related to malnutrition of children under 5 years old. Rates of global acute malnutrition exceed 10%, and over 20% of pregnant and breastfeeding women that have been screened are malnourished, often severely. As you know, mass starvation means starvation of a large proportion of a population. And a large proportion of a population of Gaza is starving. I don't know what you would call it other than mass starvation. And it's man-made. And that's very clear. And this is because of blockade.
Since the beginning of the year, the WHO has recorded 21 deaths of children under the age of 5 linked to malnutrition, but the organization stresses that this figure is below the actual number. The Canadian government has announced the aggressions of the Zionist occupation forces against civilians and humanitarian workers in Gaza, calling for the resumption of humanitarian aid distribution under the auspices of the UN in the Palestinian enclave. The Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs wrote on social media that the Zionist military operations against the World Health Organization, staff and facilities, and the World Food Program aid convoys, and the ongoing massacres of the Palestinians is unacceptable, emphasizing that civilians and humanitarian workers should be protected. Several countries and organizations have condemned the Zionist parliament's vote in favor of a statement backing the imposition of Zionist sovereignty over the occupied West Bank. The details in this report by Masoud Sharfi.
Palestinian presidential spokesman Nabil Abu Rudaina said that the Knesset's call for the occupation government to annex and impose sovereignty over occupied Palestinian land is rejected and condemned. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates strongly condemned the recent inciting statements and proposals in the Zionist Knesset or parliament that call for the imposition of the so-called Israeli sovereignty over the occupied West Bank. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, strongly denounces the recent vote by the Israeli Knesset in favor of imposing so-called Israeli sovereignty over the occupied West Bank, calling it a dangerous escalation aimed at entrenching illegal colonial occupation and undermining the two-state solution. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia condemned the recent vote by the Zionist Knesset urging the occupation government to impose sovereignty over the West Bank and the Jordan Valley. The Sultanate of Oman also voiced its denunciation over the Zionist resist Knesset's call to impose Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank, describing the move as a blatant challenge to international law and UN resolutions and a deliberate undermining of prospects for peace in the Middle East, the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, and the two-state solution. For its part, the Turkish Foreign Ministry announced on Wednesday evening that the resolution adopted by the Knesset supporting the annexation of the occupied West Bank is null and void under international law. The ministry claimed in a statement that the West Bank is a Palestinian territory occupied by Israel since 1967. It added that any attempt at annexation is a mere illegal and provocative attempt to undermine peace efforts.
Brazil has announced its intention to join the proceedings brought before the International Court of Justice by South Africa, which accuses the Israeli occupation of committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The media office in Gaza has announced that the number of journalists killed since the 7th of October 2023 has risen to 231, following the death of 2 journalists in bombings by the Zionist army in the Palestinian enclave. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Now, in the Western Sahara file, the Sahrawi government has warned of the repercussions of Morocco's continued efforts to involve certain countries in its colonial adventure. Reacting to the joint statement issued by Portugal and Morocco on Tuesday, the Sahrawi government stated that Rabat was continuing its efforts to involve certain countries in its colonial adventure and its challenge to international law and UN resolutions for a solution to the conflict in Western Sahara. Said Bougazi reports.
In a statement from the Sahrawi Ministry of Foreign and African Affairs reported by the SBS news agency, the Sahrawi government said it expected Portugal to support international legality and the defense of human rights, including the right of peoples to self-determination and independence. It reminded Portugal of its principled and historic position in favor of the Timorese people's right to self-determination and its categorical rejection of the occupation and annexation of its territory by force, as well as its insistence on maintaining its status as the administering power of the territory and its international responsibilities. This position contributed greatly to the efforts of the United Nations, which led to the holding of a popular consultation under international supervision, during which the Timorese people affirmed their deep attachment to their right to self-determination, independence, and the creation of their own independent state. The text added, the Sahrawi government expects its Portuguese counterpart and all political and social forces in Portugal to comply with the law and defend human rights, including the right of peoples to self-determination and independence, clearly enshrined in the Constitution of the Portuguese Republic and in all relevant international conventions and instruments, the statement concluded.
Now, the Regional Director for World Food Programme WFP in West and Central Africa, Margot van der Velden, said that the humanitarian situation in Nigeria is worsening. Amina Burisha has more.
The UN official stated that the humanitarian situation in Nigeria is getting worse than ever before, emphasizing that the organization will suspend emergency and food nutrition assistance to over 1.3 million people in northeast Nigeria due to start in August. She said this decision came amid severe funding shortages and a rapidly worsening humanitarian crisis.
In Nigeria today, just to give you an impression, 31 million people are facing acute food insecurity and are in need of life-saving assistance. And to give you, put this a bit in perspective, this is equivalent to the entire population of Texas going hungry. However, due to the severe funding cuts that the World Food Programme is facing, we have exhausted our food and nutrition resources. And in the beginning of August, we will have to face the heartbreaking reality of having to suspend our operations for the populations in northeast Nigeria. So over 1.3 million people will lose life-saving food assistance and nutrition support. 300,000 children will be at risk of severe malnutrition, and more than 700,000 displaced populations will be left with no means of survival.
Vendor said that endless urgent international support is mobilized. Millions in Nigeria and across West and Central Africa will face worsening conditions with devastating human consequences.
Now back to Algeria. Here in Algiers, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, offered his sincere condolences to the families of the victims of the traffic accident that occurred on Wednesday in the province of El Bayed, which left 6 people dead and 45 injured. President Tebboune extended his sincere condolences and deepest sympathy to the families of the deceased victims following the tragic accident in the province of El Bayed. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned. Goodbye for now.
مع إذاعة الجزائر الدولية لن تفوتكم لحظة واحدة من الأخبار السياسية والاقتصادية